has had some, well, they're facing a particular challenge. One of their group mates is not showing up, so they are going to be ad-libbing this a bit. So, but I have faith that they will So I give to you group 4, the writing staff. Sorry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, students and teachers. We are Curator Group 4. I am Brandon, this is Nicola, Liam and Shion. We as a group have been given the task of figuring out what the object on the screen behind me is. We have faced many challenges and problems along the way with a lot of dead ends. For example, we spent a lot of time researching thinking our object was a wig stand, just because we found a picture that looks somewhat like it.
Some of the questions that we focused on were, is it unique? Who made it? How was it made? Where was it made? What time period was it from? What was its function? What does it tell us about history? What was it made for? Some of these questions we weren't able to answer because it was not on the internet.
We first met our object on January 15th when we went to the Lotquitz Palace for Project Day. After finishing the tour, we moved downstairs to a room where one of the curators handed us an object. At first, our object looked like a table ornament for salt and pepper. It also looked like a hollow model of an air balloon. It was very fragile. We noticed that there was a lot of decoration and detailed carvings on the surface. On the base of the object, there was a place to slide something in. We guessed that it was a place to slide a candle in, but obviously since it was made of wood, it couldn't have been. Otherwise, it could have caught on fire. After 10 minutes or so, we noticed that there was a button on top of the hollow. It seemed like the button could be pushed down. We pushed down the button on top of the hollow, and it started to open. The ball split into 4 pieces, opened and revealed 4 objects. 2 of them were containers and other 2 were holders. And that is what we went on thinking for 2 weeks or so. We also thought that it was some sort of a wig stand. But then later, when we started thinking that it was a tool holder which held pens or screws, then we realized that it could be a writing set.
The 22 centimeter tall writing set has a hot air balloon shape and a 9 centimeter wide cylindrical base. It is completely made of wood and is mostly hollow, hence it weighs a mere 147 grams. Triangular shapes are carved in patterns on it and there are dark brown circles coloured around. It has a label on the bottom side of its base with the words Runita on it. This hints that it is from Runita Castle. At the top there is a button that, if pressed down, opens up 4 identical leaf-like parts that will fall in the hollow bowl. Inside there are 4 light and dark brown objects. They are a barrel-shaped pounce pot, a barrel-shaped ink pot, a taper stick, and a melted wax plate lifted on a platform. The taper stick and melted wax plate tell the story of postal services and communication. By looking at the ink pot and pounce pot, we can see the history of writing concealed in every smooth curve.
History is the story of humanity's past. However, if events in history are not chronologized, then we cannot understand why events occur because of their time period, people's needs, and events before them. The history that our object can show us occurs over 400 years, and for us to understand it, we need to be able to see it happen in front of us. Therefore, we use a timeline.
When Johannes Gutenberg started the printing revolution with his new invention, the printing press, communication changed completely. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, scribes would write in large monastery rooms called scriptoria, where there were strict rules of how to write. After the scribe, the book pays a visit to the bookcator, who draws the initial capitals and titles, and the illuminator, who draws miniatures or illustrations. Book's usage and user impacted the size, lettering, and decoration.
In 1448, 4 years before Leonardo da Vinci was born, German blacksmith Johannes Gutenberg invented the movable type and built a printing press. His idea was that if he could rearrange metal letters onto metal lines, called composing sticks, he could easily dip them into ink and stamp the lines onto sheet after sheet of paper. This way, he could stamp composing sticks with the same text numerous times. Before the printing revolution, the writing process was very slow. Writing by hand, it would take 20 months, 90 years to print 450 copies of the Bible. Using his printing press, Gutenberg and his team managed to print 450 copies in 1 year. Furthermore, it has been estimated that there were perhaps 30,000 books in all of Europe before Gutenberg printed his Bible. Less than 50 years later, there were 10 to 12 million books in all of Europe. This is 350 times more. The cost of books also fell by around 80% after the invention of the printing press. One reason the printing press was important was because it was faster and more efficient than copying by hand. Later, we will talk about how the printing press affected people's lives. The group researched the history of postal services and mail because our object has to do with writing and holds a sealing kit. The taper stick, a miniature beeswax candle, was often lit for its sweet fragrance as much as it was used to melt sealing wax. Before the invention of gummed envelopes, this wax was essential for securing important letters and documents. The decorative writing set also holds a sealing kit. It is called this because the wax was used to seal or close a letter. The stamp left the coat of arms of the noble family it was used by. We found out that after the fall of the western part of the Roman Empire, its stable postal service was terminated. However, in the late 15th century, organizations began hiring messengers. By the 1500s, mail crisscrossed Europe. The Italian and German Thurn und Taxi family had a private postal service, and later we will talk about their connection with the Lobkowitz family. Thus, the artifact also relates to how people communicated with letters.
The printing press influenced religion in Europe. In 1517, Martin Luther, a German monk, nailed his 95 Theses of Contention to the Wittenberg Church castle door. In these theses, he wrote about how he disagreed with the church's actions, mainly focusing on the uses of indulgences or grants of remission for the punishment of doing sins. The printing press made books cheaper than ever before so that the common person could own a Bible. Pope Innocent VIII saw this as a threat and required that all books are to be checked by the church. The Index of Prohibited Books was started, where there were lists of books banned by the church, but not all of the books were censored with faster production. This allowed for forbidden copies of the Bible in local languages to be distributed. Gutenberg's invention helped begin the Protestant Reformation by letting people read the Bible on their own. As explained by the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas, the printing press as a tool of political and cultural change ensured the world would never be the same.
The printing revolution encouraged the development of the scientific revolution. Around 600 years ago, religion and society all around the world were so closely connected that it would have been impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. After the invention of the printing press and the increased literacy in book production, more books about secular knowledge could be printed than ever before. The printing press made it easier for scientists to share their discoveries. Scientific work amassed to breakthroughs unachievable without the spread of ideas. Take, for instance, the Copernican Revolution. In 1543, Polish scientist Nicolaus Copernicus published his works on astronomy. He concluded that it was the sun, not the earth, that was the center of the universe. His ideas were ahead of their time, so not many took his work seriously. However, German astronomer Johannes Kepler and Italian mathematician Galileo Galilei proved his work, though they still did not understand why objects moved the way they did. English mathematician Isaac Newton finally described the law of gravity, which completed the work of the previous scientists. Without the printing press, the Copernican revolution would not have occurred, because the works of Copernicus and his supporters would not have circulated and built up to Isaac Newton's discoveries. Therefore, the printing press helped develop the scientific revolution.
As it says in 18th century English porcelain on page 124, the comparatively large number of inkstands that survived from the 18th century reflect increased literacy at the time. Literacy rates of men had increased almost 70% in Europe by the 16th century. The increase in literacy and accessibility of books caused many revolutions, such as the scientific revolution.
In 1616, Galileo Galilei supported Nicolaus Copernicus' work through his publishings, and in 1687, Isaac Newton printed the Principia Mathematica and described the laws of motion. Relating back to postal services and the Lobkowitz relationship, in 1703, Maria Ludovica Anna Franziska Lobkowitz married Anselm Franz, the second prince of the Thurn und Taxi noble family, which had a private postal service. Relating to her object, In the main square of Annonay town in France on 4th June 1783, the French-born brothers Joseph and Etienne Montgolfier showed off a machine called an aerostat for taking people into the air. It was a 10-meter tall silk balloon that reached a height of 1.6 kilometers off the ground. There were many witnesses, including influential people like King Louis XVI. This started a hot air balloon mania, and it relates to our object since it is balloon-shaped, and we hypothesized that it is from that time. In 1786, the 7th Prince Lobkowitz was named Duke of Rodnice by the Emperor Joseph II. He was a talented musician and Beethoven's patron. As our writing set comes from the Rodnice Castle collection, and since we think that our object is from the late 18th century due to the balloon mania and similar writing sets that we found from that time, our object might have belonged to Joseph Franz Maximilian himself, the 7th Prince Lobkowitz, because he was a patron of the arts. Our object is certainly decorative, with its neoclassical design.
Many of the questions that we focused on were not about the object directly because our object was unique. We mainly focused on the themes that our object connected to. We researched about the big movements that happened from the 1400s to the 1800s. Some of them included the start of the Protestant and Counter-Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, and the Printing Revolution. One of the great sources that we looked at was by the University of Texas, and it gave us more information about Johannes Gutenberg's legacy and the printing press. The reason that we know this site is trustworthy is because at the bottom of the page we clicked on the Contact Us section, and we found that the page was written by the professors at the university.
We discovered our object's function by going to an artist's site called Randy Asplund. He was a professional illuminator. Searching up on his site, after seeing on his site that he had a ceramic pan spot image, we searched in Google and found on the British Museum site a writing kit that is very similar to ours. So here's our process. First we started on an artist's site, then we saw the image, and then we searched it up, and we found a very reliable source, the British Museum, and from there we discovered what our object was. We also sent an email to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and in our email we told them what we already knew, and we asked them 3 questions, mainly what the style of our object was, and when it might have come from. The reply came from Kate Hay, curator from the museum, from the Decorative Arts Department of the museum, and she said that it seems that it's like a balloon, and it might have come from the balloon mania in the late 18th century, which makes sense because our object is very similar to writing sets that we found on the British Museum site, and they also came from the late 1700s. Alongside our research, we created a blog to record our discoveries. Our group is confident that our research is reliable and that we have worked exceptionally well as a team. In conclusion, the decorative writing set of the 7th Prince Lobkowitz gives us insight of writing before the printing revolution, and yet it comes from a period at the end of the Enlightenment. The writing set is an example of how people communicated with letters and can show us why nobles were patrons of the arts. The desire to write grows with writing, and so has the desire to learn and explore the universe. Copernicus was puzzled when looking at the sky, but he spent the next 25 years tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. His yearning for comprehension grew and grew. The decorative writing set symbolizes a connection between the past and the future. The 400 years of history that the writing set represents, from the 1400s to 1800s, have changed Europe, from its dark ages with no crave for knowledge, to the world overflowing with information that we live in today. Thank you.
Okay, with that, the presentations in this room are done. Refreshments will be coming in momentarily. You can take this opportunity to talk to your students about any questions you have about their presentations. Give them a hard time. Don't be nice to them. They've studied this for 4 months. They should be asked some tough questions, see what they know. And up here are the objects that they worked with in the flyers. So please, flow around, and we'll be starting up again at 8 o'clock.
Indoor.
Yeah, you can also go to the other rooms if you want to see some of the objects there.